Hello, everyone. It's your boy Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It, and I just got back from the theaters seeing the new crime drama The Kitchen, starring Melissa McCarthy, Tiffany Haddish, and Elisabeth Moss. And I'll give you my review after the jump. All right, little housekeeping before we get started. If you haven't already, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to the page and the channel and the video. Ring that bell anytime we have something. You'll be the first to know. First 500 folks that become subscribers to the channel will be the founders of the channel, and I'll give somebody something nice for hanging around and letting everybody know about the place. Now onto the review. So for those of you who don't know, The Kitchen is a movie based on a DC Vertigo comic by the same name about three women who take over the crime family, the Irish crime family mob, after their husbands are sent off to prison. I've never read the comic, so I'm not basing my review on the graphic novel, but if you have, please let me know in the comments below if the movie was close or not. I will be getting to it, but since we weren't doing the podcast about it, I didn't. I just watched the movie on its own merit. So here are the things that I liked. What I loved about this movie, and this isn't even a like, this is a love. I thought this was a fantastic character study. I think the three lead actresses in Melissa McCarthy, Elisabeth Moss, and Tiffany Haddish, yes, even Tiffany Haddish, do an amazing job acting in this film. Melissa McCarthy has gotten to the point now where I don't want to see her in any comedies anymore. I like to see her in dramas because she's really, really good at it and very believable. Elisabeth Moss is great as being kind of sort of the wild card of the group, and Tiffany Haddish, to my surprise, can act. And I'm glad she did this because I was getting of the belief that she was being typecast, and she was, and it's smart. You'd have to do that when you first get in, but she had been put into these roles of being the ratchet black woman, and that was her role. And that's what she was always doing. To see that she has other ranges and does really well at them makes me happy. And now that I hope that this has been shown, she'll be able to get to kind of play with this a little bit more. But I love the performances in this movie. I think everyone, including the men, but I really think the three women are super strong and made me feel things for them that I don't necessarily know that the script or the directing do their job at letting that feel. Like, I think the actors are what make me feel that, even at the detriment of some of the other things that I don't think quite work or 100% sell the flick. Two, what I really love is that, I don't know if the comic does it, but it does definitely do the women empowerment a big thing. I think one of the biggest things about this film is that it shows women how it was to be in the shadows. You cooked and cleaned, you raised their kids, you were expected to, unfortunately, provide children and not much more, or get beat and just take it. And I feel like these three women have three completely different stories, and they all do a great job of telling those stories in this world. Even what I was questioning in my trailer review for this movie about Tiffany Haddish being a black woman in the Irish mob, it's all dealt with. There's answers and questions, and all of that stuff is dealt with. And I think they do it great and well enough that it is the through line of a story. And I was like, okay, good. They addressed it, and it is a big part of what this film is. And it shows how, if women take over and do things that they're equal to, or in most cases better than what men do. And it also shows the fault of men who ego always gets in the way, because even though they may do something just as well as their woman, or their woman is doing something on par, they may not feel comfortable enough in their skin to allow them to shine. Three, this movie does a good job of putting twists and shocks in there that aren't telegraphed. I'm not going to spoil anything for anybody, but there are some moments where I was like, oh, I didn't see that coming. And that is a plus for me, because that is very, very rare in today's movies. A lot of things, especially since I've seen so many movies and I'm an actor and I do write from time to time, some of the stuff is, I can see it from a mile away. And for this one, I wasn't ahead of the story, which is good. But there is one major fault with this movie. And it is what, unfortunately, keeps this movie from being great to being really, good and okay. And it's a thing that Blake and I have talked about on the podcast before. My dislike is the ending of this movie. I don't think this movie has a climax. There is something that they will quote unquote label a climax, but I think for all the setup and all the great character development that happens in this movie, it ends with one of the weakest resolutions of a disagreement or a discourse that people are having, and probably the weakest way that I've seen in a film in a very long time. And it made me so sad, because I think movies have a way of doing this thing. Comedies do it a lot, horror movies do too, that if you're bad or okay for the entire film and you nail the ending, people will be a lot more forgiving for what movie you are. Flip that on the other side, if you are really good to great the most of the film and then you have an ending that is very, very subpar, you're gonna have a film that most people just like, it was mediocre, it was okay. And that unfortunately is kind of what I feel has happened to The Kitchen. If you look at the reviews and Rotten Tomatoes and how I feel about the film as well, I think that is definitely what took place. It just feels very quick. One, it feels very quick and rushed, but two, it feels very hollow. I'm not going to spoil what exactly happens, but it feels very quick. And for me, I feel that the climax of this movie happens after this particular movie ends. Like, I feel like the climax of what actually is going to take place happens after this. This almost feels like a made-for-TV pilot or a Hallmark pilot that that doesn't quite have the ending and knows that, like, we have more episodes to tell what we have to do. I think the finale of this movie doesn't really, the antagonist is a quasi-antagonist, but then when you get to the climax, you send them off on their way at the very end, and you're kind of just like, oh, well, the story is going to be on the back end with where their stories go from this point on. And it's frustrating, because I sat there in the theater like, oh, damn it. There's about 85% of this movie that I absolutely love. And then there's the last 15 minutes that just rubs me the wrong way. The other thing that I don't quite like about the film is sometimes I think scenes are cut short or directed in a way that it doesn't feel like this is a fully realized in what they're trying to do directing wise. I use Widows because I think Widows is the closest film to this as far as I had leading women done well. I just think that movie is directed and stylized so well that this one isn't. And it's weird because I think we've done so many mafia and mob films that if you don't have a stylistic choice, then you're kind of just doing it by numbers. And I feel like a lot of the times in this movie, sometimes it's just being done by numbers, which sucks, because I think the characters do such a good job of carrying their weight that I wish that the directing and some of the way that things were shot and some of the ways that the script were a little heavier for them. And third, I just think when you do a mafia or mob film, there has to be at least one action sequence. And this has violence and blood and murder. Don't worry about that. But there's no action sequences in this. Even with Widows, which is 90% drama and setup, you still get the final like action beat of kind of an actual shootout or some type of intensity. And this movie never gets, because the climax is so weak, which was my first dislike, there's never an intensity rise or fall. It's kind of all one note and is going so much on the characters. And I will say this, for my rating, whether I play it again, Sam, whether once is enough, whether and give me a time stone so I'll never have to see this film again. This is in the once is enough. But it's weird because it's in that, it's sort of almost in the in-between. It's once is enough because I think overall the film just doesn't, you're going to forget about it the second you leave. But it's quasi play it again, Sam, because I think you need to see the performances of these three women, because I think they're acting their butts off. I just wish everything else that was associated with this film worked with them, because I think if it did, we would have an Oscar caliber type of film. Unfortunately, it just feels like a made-for-TV movie that has some freaking amazing performances in it. But that's my thoughts. What did you guys think about it? Have you seen The Kitchen? Where would you rank it on this scale? Leave your comments in the comments below. If you haven't, go ahead, like, share, subscribe. Like we said before, we have a podcast by the same name that you can find on Apple Podcasts now, Spotify, Google Play, anywhere that plays podcasts. We did not have an episode last week because we were all out of town, but we will be doing Hobbs and Shaw this week and a Scary Movies to Tell in the Dark the following week. If you want to hit us up on email, you can hit us up on HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter at Hollywood80i. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours?